Hello there and welcome to Equity Story. My name is Dawid Malinowski and my guest today is Paweł Michalski, the CEO and co-founder of VCLeaders.
Pleasure.
Good to have you. Thank you for making time to see us. So I suppose just to start off, for those of our viewers who perhaps don't know yet who VCLeaders are, the important and frankly amazing things that you guys do, perhaps we can kick off the discussion here from you telling us a bit more about the project.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, really. So we started VCLeaders about 6 years ago. The mission has always been the same for us. From the very beginning. We wanted to help shape the VC sector in Poland and the CEE region. We believe that there is an amazing potential in people here. However, the circumstances are not always the best. We focus on serving the VC industry as in general partners and limited partners first and foremost. So we don't necessarily deal with startups ourselves. And the main product or experience of VCLeaders is basically our VCLeaders Academy, which helps educate the next generation of professional VC investors in Poland, the CE region, and hopefully beyond that too.
And in terms of what you see in terms of, I suppose, the market, the general sort of state of play, if you like. So the venture capital scene in Poland and perhaps broader, more broadly speaking, in CE, what's the current situation?
State of play, yeah. So I think that to speak generally about venture capital these days is quite risky, if you may, because the whole sector is undergoing dramatic changes right now. From COVID only about 2 years ago to war in Ukraine last year, rising interest rates, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. All of these things have affected VC dramatically and will definitely influence it still as we move into 2023. It's very interesting for us basically because when we started VCLeaders those 6 years ago, we always knew that we were here in for a long game, and it's been very interesting to be in the front row seat and kind of see the changes with our own eyes. Speaking about the CE VC scene, it's also changing dramatically. And to give you some specific examples, when I say COVID, and everybody knows that once we all knew what we were dealing with, the VC industry was actually benefiting from the move to remote, digitizing all the processes. This was an amazing boost for venture capital. However, when the war hit and the interest rates rose dramatically, we also expected kind of the swift rebound of VC investments, but it never happened. It's actually quite the opposite. So it was a very quick boom and bust cycle in the last 2 years. And I think that even until now, everybody's kind of trying to figure out what's going to happen in the next.
What's next on the agenda, essentially.
Which
if you don't mind me saying this, I reckon it's been quite an interesting few years, the past 3-4 years, in the Chinese sense of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think to this extent, it's hard for me to predict what's going to happen next. But I think that the foundations of of the underlying factors of this sector in CEE have never really changed. The talent is here, the opportunities are here. It's still much cheaper in terms of valuations, although I dare say I've seen some CEE-based startups that seem not to have noticed that the winds have changed and actually the valuations have changed as well. So VCs expect a bit of a drop in expectations, but nevertheless, all those things are still here. What has changed recently is how interested foreign VCs are in this
market,
space. And there's a very simple reason for that, which is all the factors that we've mentioned are also present in in other ecosystems, sometimes more established ecosystems like the US, obviously, but UK, France, Germany, they have all seen valuations drop, expectations being kind of more modest, which means for VC specifically, they can look at many more targets in their own ecosystem and sift through them more accurately and hopefully attractively to attract more interesting companies to their portfolios there, which means that the hype cycle has the end of the hype cycle has also affected CEE a bit more than it might have had if we were in Germany or France.
And actually, in terms of, because we focus quite a bit on CEE here, broadly speaking, as we discussed, the state of play in the market, how does it compare, do you reckon, at this particular stage to these more, let's call it mature markets that you've just mentioned, so the United States, Western Europe, perhaps Israel, Asia?
I think there is no point in comparing us to the US, simply because it's such a vast market with its own history that lasts for more than 50 years now, almost 70 years. But comparing where we are to what else is out there in Europe, I think the main difference, the main observable difference is access to capital at different stages, because it's also important to point out that at every single stage, as in seed stage, Series A, Series B, stages of development of your company, the availability of money is quite different. And I don't think that this is gonna change anytime soon. For more mature markets, you simply have more people who exited successfully from their companies and do angel investing. In Poland, what we've seen over the last couple of years is that though there are many more angels, it's still, the core is still the same, which means that it's slowly but surely growing, albeit if you're looking for capital on pre-seed / seed stage, you have to accept the fact that you might be looking for your early supporters elsewhere. And it's also very similar at later stages. There's simply there are not many players at the Series B stage that can support your company and help you, outgrow the CEE region. But it's not in that, of course. It's hard to generalize because country to country comparisons, even in Central Eastern Europe, are very difficult. But I think that in broad terms, the quality of the preparedness of a startup to raise capital and to scale their enterprise is still far behind what people are simply aware of in other ecosystems in Europe.
Is it the question, you reckon, of sort of confidence in one's ability, in one's vision, or is it the matter that people should be, the startup leaders effectively should be educated more about internationalization of their businesses in terms of what their Western counterparts do?
Well, I think that the question there never really has been the question of being convinced about what you do has never really been the question in here.
Okay.
The problem is that once you know what you want to achieve and once you're sure that this is the way to go, how much ready are you to accept that it's not going your way, and how quickly
agile
can you pivot? How agile are you really? Can you take in some feedback, some harsh feedback that other stakeholders might give you? It's not only a question about what the venture investors tell you, but it's also a question of what your clients or potential clients in the Western hemisphere are telling you. So to this extent, I think that we are still lagging behind Europe. I'm not even comparing us to Israel or the US, but we're still lagging behind that. I was recently told by an investor friend that the main problem of CEE-based companies is the lack of marketing/sales skills. While I don't necessarily agree with that, I think it's fair to say that our region has only rarely produced brand names.
That's true.
In terms of brand awareness, even though we've had many successful companies. There's only
and we have that potential, don't we? You've said the resources they are here in terms of in particular human capital, people who are amazingly enthusiastic, well educated, have excellent command of English, that are well trained.
Well, it's hard. Again, it's hard for me to generalize, but I think it's about the maturity of the whole economy, if you may, because when I look at, for instance, Germany, obviously it has taken them a bit longer, to get that here. I mean, we still have some time to catch up, right? They started earlier, and I refer right now. I refer strictly to the VC ecosystem or the startup ecosystem. But what amazes me is how many old companies want to have an in on the whole tech revolution, on the whole startup scene. Like you see so many PR/marketing firms making their own workshops with startups, without asking anything in return, because they believe that
it's an investment for them.
That's how they nurture their potential clients in the future. You have the names such as Jung von Matt, one of the best marketing/creative agencies in Europe, having their own sort of an accelerator that awards branding packages and creates brand stories with startups, so that you can actually remember what the startup is about or what the startup's mission is. I think we still don't pay too much attention to that point of the startup journey. And instead focus on our technical capabilities.
But that's not everything. If you have an excellent product, you also have to know how to properly sell it, how to kind of explain the customers, potential stakeholders, business partners, why do you actually need this idea.
And it's not always the best product that wins,
Absolutely, yes.
It's sometimes you may even have a shitty product that sells really well. I mean, sells itself really well, and you don't even bother improving that product because you've created enough of brand awareness.
The volume is there,
the volume
and it goes like a snowball effect, effectively.
I myself am using several tech tools that I'm not particularly happy
of,
with or
yeah.
fond of, but I keep on doing them because there's
You
no
just do
alternative.
the job and it's just like whatever, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's hard to find an alternative if if the startup is if then a tech company when it grows is so popular, then that you won't easily find an alternative for that product /
Yeah,
tool.
it's human behavior kicks in, right? You might not be completely happy with the product or with, let's say, the brand or the values of the company, but you're just like, it's just easier to keep the status quo as it is than to change and look for something else. Isn't it? It's completely, fair enough. And we've mentioned for a bit some of the things that the startups here do, or could do at least better. So in terms of strictly attracting funding, that we also discussed that could obviously come from outside of Poland, outside of CE. What is it that you reckon in your experience that the startups here could do to be more attractive to outside investors, other than the things that aside of the things that you already discussed?
I think learning the ropes of the industry is the go-to advice on my end, at least.
So in your particular sector, you mean?
Not necessarily of the VC sector, because
I see, okay.
So the way VC works is a bit different from any other sector. Obviously, it's similar to other private market asset classes, but the way you approach your potential investor, the way you present yourself, the way you prepare your pitch materials, the way the way your thinking is structured, it all has to take into account that VC is a very peculiar animal, one that you have to learn to deal with. So the sooner you learn how the industry works and the sooner you learn about potential expectations of your investors, the better. That being said, if you're planning on approaching an investor, I would strongly suggest you do your research first, because I still see
people coming in unprepared.
Not to a pitch meeting, but to to even send an email to somebody who's never done a deal or who hasn't been active as an investor for years is probably not the best choice.
That's kind of scattergun approach, as in that's what I mean by coming in unprepared. So not understanding your audience, not doing this sort of basic research. So it's still common, you think?
At least I do see a lot of startups that do that. And frankly speaking, even if I had the time to, I wouldn't be able to help everybody. Of course, people come to you and friends come to you. Friends come to every VC with their, potential
brilliant idea.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
And they ask for advice, and it's really hard, on a case-by-case basis to help everybody. So I think learning what VC is about and how to approach investors is important. And I know that founders don't necessarily have the time to do it because they're focused on building their business. It's not about the business that shouldn't be about how to find an investor. Like, this shouldn't be your main
goal,
focus,
the name
right?
of the game. Yes.
Exactly. This should be as important as in focusing on your marketing, sales, and product, right?
Of course.
But while we kind of know that we have to learn about the latter, I think many people disregard the former and think like there's so many of VCs these days, somewhere out there. That
so much money.
Yeah, they would definitely find my match, which is rarely the case.
This is not Tinder, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, it sort of is about finding your match, but the proportions are not
And it doesn't
Like
work
that,
like,
yeah.
here's what I have. Do you like it? If you do, then send me your money. It doesn't work like that. And
well-
I think that people still, and it's not only about CE, but people still think about that. But I think, again, speaking about the challenges of where we sit, I think some of this is a byproduct of us having a lot of technical talent. So when you talk to a technical guy that is convinced about the product
and his
that he
abilities,
has, and his
everything,
abilities to develop the product and the usefulness of that product, he or she might forget about all the other steps that
like good
a
marketing,
brilliant company
yeah.
takes.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I think I try to remember that as a professional who also advises people. So, so just to use an example from mergers and acquisitions, for instance, at every point when I advise, for example, people who founded a company, now they have developed it, and now they are looking to either move on, to sell it, to cash out slightly, perhaps buy that dream holiday home in Spain, whatever that is. And they are not professionals in this sector like I am. I always try, when advising them, to remember that it's not so obvious, readily kind of available knowledge to them as it is to me. So I can see where these people come from in terms of not kind of being aware that that all these other things that you also have to keep in mind and and take care of effectively, so that the whole overall product can be sold and that you can convince people to actually invest money in it. But taking a step back from the VC world as such, what do you reckon in terms of what the Polish government and the European Union do or don't do? Is there enough in terms of investment into sort of the general VC ecosystem and VC investments by these two stakeholders, or do you think more could be done, for instance, on the sort of state and international level?
I think, and once again, I would have to make the caveat that it's hard to generalize. Like, every government does things differently.
Well, let's, for the sake of argument here,
Absolutely, and I think it's a good start because when I look back at how VCLeaders started, it was it coincided with the beginnings of PFR Ventures, which is our largest fund of funds in Poland, and people might disagree with me on the details, but I think everybody notices these days that what PFR has done, investing millions into a breed of new, emerging fund managers, but also attracting interest from foreign GPs and oftentimes major league players in the VC game, is a testament to the fact that there are things that the government can do, or maybe even should do, in order to help the industry get off the ground and start running. In terms of other things, I believe that people oftentimes forget that money is not everything in here.
It's mentoring as well, isn't it?
It's not only about mentoring per se. It's about other instruments that shape the ecosystem.
Policy tax,
regulatory. They're all areas that somebody has to take into account if they want to start a company here or there, or invest in a company here or there, right? I think what has caught my eye recently was the establishment of this so-called future fund. I think in the UK. The government wanted to make UK a deep tech superpower, and they announced installing, I think, £500 million of money, investment-ready money to support that mission. But I think 500 million pounds is I think medium-sized VC in the US. So how would you want to make a superpower out of your country investing only as much as a medium-sized VC in the US, right?
Yeah, I mean,
you would never outcompete them with that
Yeah.
sort of money. What you could do, however, is to make your country or your ecosystem
attractive destination.
Exactly. And I think many countries have struggled with that recently. Many have learned that it's not, an exercise in presenting your country as an attractive place to be, like posting some pictures of your.
It's not going to cut it, is it?
It's not.
It's the
definitely.
tax, right? It's how easy it is to actually do business in terms of establishing a vehicle there, getting the right permits. I mean, to be fair, when you, I'm sorry, when you started talking about the UK, I really thought to myself, Jesus, I mean, they could have started with just getting the trains to run on time there, really, and not having strikes every so often. But obviously, I keep my fingers crossed for them.
It's sometimes that simple, It's sometimes that simple, like how one feels going to this country, or this or that country.
Do you feel welcomed as well?
Yeah, like. Do you like being here? Do you like talking to people here? Do you like what you're seeing in terms of investment opportunities? How does the government make you feel in terms of how welcome you are when you
What's the sort of general climate for outside investors, foreigners doing business in your country? Is the legal system friendly? Do I have confidence in that? For example, when I bring my money, buy assets here, establish a firm here, will my intellectual property be properly protected? Yeah. Will my assets be safe in the sense that it can be all sorts of things, vexatious litigation, you name it.
Like how safe you feel when a bank goes down, that your money would be
precisely
there
right.
for you, right? So I think this is an opportunity for Central Eastern Europe as well. Yes, if you take a look at the forces that are shaping the global economy these days, banks are, being toppled by
challenges,
black swans, basically. Challenges, of course, and everybody knew about them before. But 12 months ago, who would have thought that Credit Suisse will be no more, that Silicon Valley Bank.
One of the bulge bracket banks, 100 and something, 150, 70 years in business and gone.
Yeah, like that, right? So this has definitely damaged to some degree
confidence.
Confidence that people have in
the system in general, and the contract between us, the government, and the economy, and everyone.
And this is. I consider this an opportunity because I think, despite what people might think, there is a lot of good things to be said about these smaller countries. I mean, Poland is a small country, in comparison to the US or even the UK. But if you think about that. It's really I think it's a matter of time when people realize that being in here is very cost effective, that people are as talented as they are anywhere else in the world, and that the underlying opportunities, the ones that I've mentioned in the beginning, are here. So. Keeping my fingers crossed for that time.
No, of course. And I mean, there's obviously, even for me personally, a massive ring of truth to what you said, that, despite the fact that this is a smaller country than, for example, the United Kingdom, there are amazing things here that one might consider coming for and basically making that choice between England, say, and Poland, and choosing Poland. Last question, really. In terms of the broader market here, and the sort of general innovation. In terms of sectors, your three picks, top picks when it comes to, sectors in which you reckon in this country they are the most interesting venture capital stage businesses. What would you pick?
I think this is going to be my wishful thinking speaking right now, because I'm already thinking about what kind of edge can we have in this big
competitive market.
Yeah, exactly. This is me thinking, but I think healthcare would be my first answer. It's such an undiscovered market in here. The talent is definitely here, and the venture side of things is much more difficult. Because when you talk about healthcare, there is a huge difference between digital healthcare, and generalist investors could invest in those kind of companies, and deep tech in healthcare is a very complicated thing to finance. Speaking about molecule creation, it's a completely different thing, and people perceive healthcare in different ways, and that's why they oftentimes they're not interested for one particular reason, because deep tech investors don't want to necessarily look at the first and the digital healthcare market, and the opposite way. Two other sectors, I think B2B software is also very interesting, and in many verticals, sometimes niche verticals, it's still going to be a very interesting space for investors to look into. And the third one, I think there's an emerging class of founders in green economy / impact economy. I think that we've finally matured enough to understand the problems of the world, and that the challenges that are awaiting us are much deeper than just finding your next social network and be a part of a next social network. I think that saving the environment, saving humanity, and the challenges that are attached to those impact areas are right now the focus of many new emerging entrepreneurs in the region. And there's a lot of evidence that various countries have expertise in various segments of this market, and it's only a matter of time when they're gonna catch the attention of VCs. Hopefully.
Well, I suppose, and in terms of the focus on, we can broadly call it the ESG sort of investment, I just see that every conference that I am invited to, every major event, there is some sort of angle, some discussion stream.
But I think that ESG is not enough. It's simply a matter of how you report your impact on those three areas.
Actual difference.
And making the actual difference is the main theme of the what I would call impact capitalism, where people proactively want to solve a very specific problem. They measure their action, they measure their results, and since we don't have enough time to dive deeper into that, let me just say that I think that the next generation of founders, be it in CEE or elsewhere, will focus on that or those verticals much more than the founders did historically.
Previous years.
And we're already seeing the first, the early birds, but I definitely expect to see many more startups. Maybe not in all the verticals, like maritime startups, not so sure, but clean tech, definitely.
Well, that's quite, as a general accent, that's pretty optimistic in my mind. So yeah, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Our guest today, thank you, Paweł Michalski.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Dawid Malinowski. Thank you so much and see you next week. Goodbye.